What's up, CoinZone fam? I just sat down with Angry Crypto and we talked everything Cardano. He reveals the biggest things happening in Cardano at the moment, everything from Bitcoin DeFi to the launch of Midnight to which Cardano native tokens are going to skyrocket. Buckle up for this one, guys. And if you're part of the ADA gang, let me know in the comments. Enjoy this episode with Angry Crypto. All right, Angry Crypto. Brother, thank you for coming back on the channel. I've been looking forward to this chat with you again. Thanks for coming on. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. Appreciate it. Appreciate for having me on, and doing great. Can't complain. You know, very grateful to be here, and really excited to jump into crypto and like all the exciting stuff going on, man. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we just hit the record here, we were chatting. There's never a dull moment in the markets. 7 days a week, not like the stock market closed on the weekends. So much has been going on. The Genius Act was just passed. The digital asset report came out yesterday. A lot is happening right now. A lot of bullish stuff. But you are mainly focused, your channel, you do a lot of Cardano content. So I wanted to make this episode specifically a lot of questions about Cardano, the direction you think it's headed, tons of questions there, and then maybe one or two questions for you about Litecoin towards the end.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%.
Cool, man. So the first question I want to ask is, anybody I interview in the crypto space, I just always ask this question: how did you get into crypto?
Yeah, it's the question of all questions, you know, other than when and can devs do something, you know? So crypto, I think a lot of us, like, there's overlapping things that kind of bring us together. You know, I'm in my 30s now, but you know, when I was like 15, 16 years old, I always grew up as like a gamer and playing the Super Nintendo, and my dad got me the N64, and I was always kind of like, you know, a shy gamer kind of nerd growing up. So I always enjoyed tinkering with like electronics and you know, like messing around with computers, building computers. And I was always fascinated by software, even at a young age. I would like watch my hard drive being defragmented, and I'd watch, like, you know, I'd go from Windows 98 to Windows this and Windows this. So I enjoyed so much the transition of software, you know, during the dot-com like boom. And so fast forward to pretty much like, you know, the BitConnect days, the ICO days. During that cycle, I was introduced to Ethereum, and I remember I was using Jack's wallet, and I was just kind of like, it was a natural fit. I was already enjoying tinkering around with computers. And so mining Ethereum was kind of just natural. Like, oh, what is this? Let me try mining this. This was when Ethereum was still proof of work. And I never really took it serious. It was just kind of more of a hobbyist, just kind of experimenting. And like many people, you know, you hear about it during the highs or when there's kind of reaching its crescendo. And unless you're really committed to it, you kind of walk away. So really, it didn't really get serious with crypto until 2021. And that was after, you know, 2020, COVID. It really showcased like sound money and the problem with our money. And it was really front center focus, how corroded and how inflated our fiat, you know, our dollar became. And so it was a no-brainer at that point. That's when I was introduced to the likes of like XRP and things like this. And so I was just naturally fascinated. And it was in August of 2020. It was in around the 2020 time where I started to take an interest. And from there, it began the kind of like taking it seriously and working different jobs. And we can get into that. But it was really, that was the Kickstarter. I would say the catalyst that started it was 2020. And really all eyes went on inflation. And it was at that point where many people were taking a look at risk assets. And so likewise, I was doing the same. I was saying, hey, how can I hedge against this? You know, what are people doing? And it was just kind of natural going from that technical background to kind of like, oh, the economy's getting wrecked. So it was like a natural fit.
Yeah. I saw a post recently that said $1,000 stimulus check investment into Bitcoin 4+ years ago would be worth around $21,000 right now. At the same rate, the US dollar has been devalued around 25%, I believe it is, maybe even more.
It's nuts. It's crazy. It's crazy, so right? You know, if we look at the value of gold back then versus the value of gold today, or, you know, the 20x increase in stablecoin issuance versus 5 years ago in crypto. I put a tweet out saying that ADA has no top because Fiat has no bottom. And I think I took that inspired by Saylor, or I don't know who said it, but there's no bottom to it. So for all intents and purposes, risk assets will continue to do very well this cycle. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And going off that too, the stable coins, over 50% basically of this platform that's being built before our eyes, basically, and obviously existing platforms, it's mostly being built on Ethereum. So Ethereum has stable coins. Solana has tokenized NASDAQ, stocks. This is basically a post from Altcoin Daily. He said Cardano has Bitcoin DeFi. I want to ask you that same question though. What is the appeal? Is it Bitcoin DeFi? Because in my eyes, there's so many different things you could look at when it comes to Cardano. But asking that same question to you, what's the appeal?
Yeah, that's a good question. I love open-ended questions of like what and why, and it's a fantastic question. And I would say that with Cardano, since its inception in quarter 4 of 2017, and coming up on almost 8 years, Cardano has some strengths a lot in the I love qualitative analysis. So my background is also in UX design, UX research. What makes people think the way they do? What are design principles? What makes them generate positive emotions? Color theory, shapes, geometry, things of this nature. Really good design just goes unnoticed. It just flows. And with Cardano, a lot of those qualitative elements are important, kind of like XRP Army, reminiscent of XRP Army. The network effect that Cardano built is something that you can't really speed run it. So one of the competitive advantages of Cardano is really a very strong, relentless, loyal community, very active community as a result of just being here for a long time. And a great example is when Charles Hoskinson even mentioned that when Microsoft, if you remember Bing just as the search, not now with Copilot, but just Bing strictly as a search engine, Microsoft Bing tried to kind of emulate Google's network effect quickly with billions of dollars, and they couldn't. They were always kind of seen as a meme. But nowadays they're crushing it with the new CEO and new software and all the acquisitions. Cardano has its strengths in resilience. So when Charles says that kind of classic saying, you see it often of like no outages, running 24/7, no hacks. He did say recently that many other chains experience, $80 to $100 million in hacks on a very frequent basis. And so when it comes to mission critical tasks, when it comes to that resilience and that safety, it is its narrative. And there's almost a symbiotic relationship between Cardano and many other chains where if a chain just dissolves, because many projects don't even exist that were in that top 20, top 30 during the 2017, 18, 19, and so on, all it does is galvanize Cardano's narrative, which is the safe and secure chain, the resilient chain, the one that has a kind of an organic community that rallies behind it. And that is also part of its decentralization, very spread out, a very small blockchain size, under 200 gigabytes, very approachable to participate in the network. And they were also, the liquid staking also makes it very easy to participate. Anybody can participate in staking with no vested period. Anybody can vote. So it just empowers the user to a point where the accessibility is easier. The barrier to entry is easier. And it allows people to participate in a way they can show their value in an easier way. But there's still fantastic competitive advantages with the rest of the ecosystem. And I'm looking forward to that day where more of the ecosystem works together. So yeah, I would say one strong thing is definitely the resilience and the community of Cardano. And there are some other ones as well, but those are some strong ones.
So Charles Hoskinson recently just said this week in an interview, when asked, is ADA a better buy over Bitcoin? He said yes, because it's just going to outperform it. Maybe in the future, 100x or 1000x we can see, he said. First off, do you think 1000x is possible for ADA in the next 5 or 10 years or so?
Yeah, I mean, I saw that post and I was chuckling. I told my brother, I'm like, bro, the math doesn't math. Part of the reason why I founded Angry Crypto was I founded Angry Crypto, enjoying a cigar and a black coffee a couple of years ago. I'm like, you know what? Too many people are telling you to refinance your home for like a shite coin, you know, to buy this and buy that. And there was a lack of integrity in the space. This is also why people back Charles, is that, you know, he's not afraid to be unique and speak his mind and go on different podcasts like with Sean Ryan or David G and many others and speak his mind. And people like that he's, you know, he's different. He's got the grit. When it comes to 100x or 1000x, I think that, you know, he might have been alluding to just in the grand future, right? He didn't give a specific timeline. This cycle, like, I don't think so, no. For months and years, I've been saying, like, as a conservative price prediction, that Cardano could hit that $5 to $7 range. I try to err on the side of caution instead of giving like ultra moon boy Mars price predictions. I try to go with what's more pragmatic and probable instead of possible, but we never know. Like, you know, as Alex Becker has said, like, in a market that's irrational and highly speculative, anything's possible. And I think a major issue is that we often mid-curve and overthink, all of us, especially when we're in the industry. We're like, what's the fundamentals? What's this? And we forget about how simple retail thinks from a brand perspective. When it comes to 100x, 1000x, I don't think so. Not this cycle, but maybe in the long distant future. And I think he just is aligning that with the corrosion of fiat, because it doesn't seem like we're going to pay any debt anytime soon. You know, with the one big beautiful bill and everything, the money printer is prime. So in that regards, sure. But I don't think like in this cycle.
So Bo Hines said yesterday, after this digital asset report was released, he was doing an interview live, and he was asked about the Bitcoin strategic reserve. He said, we love Bitcoin. We're all in on it. We're going to buy as much as we can. But then they asked about the digital stockpile. Now, Cardano was not mentioned in that digital asset report yesterday. However, they asked Bo Hines, what's important if you're going to add something to that digital stockpile? And he said, number one, we look at decentralization. So in me, I'm like, all right, well then Cardano's obviously good then. So talk about what makes Cardano arguably the most decentralized blockchain over Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's a great question. In regards to decentralization, sometimes people use that as like a theatrics or a performative metric, and it's kind of become meme every now and then. Like, decentralization, when we look at it, can be so many different factors, and it would take us forever to cover it in one video. Charles kind of points to the Edinburgh Decentralization Index, which has these factors like Nakamoto coefficient and different things to analyze elements of decentralization, if you will. And Cardano continues to rank high in terms of decentralization. When I think pragmatic as just, you know, let's just say regular user, I think of things like approachability to participate in the network. You know, if I want to spin up like a Solana validator or something, it's going to cost a lot of money. It's going to require a lot of hardware, gigantic storage to do so. Not the case with Cardano. And Cardano is also working on what's called Mithril, which is like light clients, which will allow people to participate even easier, not necessitating the full node, if you will. But yeah, the full node is still very small for Cardano relative to, say, Bitcoin past 500 gigabytes. And Cardano is a very unique protocol that people often misunderstand. There used to be that FUD of like one transaction per block. Cardano's transactions can have hundreds of events in one transaction. When it comes to the decentralization, I would say that it's network participants and the thousands of stake pool operators. The fact that they can all participate, become a stake pool operator, and also the delegators as well. So often people talk about TVL being an issue, but DeFi Llama doesn't count the over 1.33 million users that are delegating, like stakers, if you will. And so there's a lot of users that help to kind of spread out that the network effect all around the world. But also things like governance as well. People being able to vote, people being able to put proposals, and with the burning of the Genesis keys, because Charles was often criticized for that. That was actually a big catalyst. People are saying, you still have the keys. It was around August or maybe end of August towards September of 2024, when they made the announcement that they burned the Genesis keys and the treasury is just in the hands of the community, which is again, like it's like 1.5, something like that, $billion worth of ADA. So it's really like kind of a combination of these things. And I'm sure many more as well, but these are just some things that come to mind of like small blockchain size, lots of network participants, a lot of people validating the network around the world, barrier to entry being low, it's liquid democracy and a liquid staking, which by the way, they can be done in tandem. Someone can be staking, but also voting and doing things on DeFi in a way that is very parallel. And it's just incentivizes more of this kind of open participation that on many other networks you don't see. But like I say, I try to be more pragmatic because I think that if a network is sufficiently decentralized, it's okay. Because in the real world, we have a centralized electrical grid, centralized internet, centralized sewer system, and centralized infrastructure, and centralized pilot, centralized air traffic control. And we have to be a little pragmatic also when we see people just using it as like one-liner narratives. Because I believe that we can always learn from each other. And I think those blockchains like ETH and Solana and Ripple, I'm not opposed to, and I think they've done some incredible work as well, even if they don't run the whole full decentralization slogan, if you will, or like the mission statement.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say that
Solana
that's
is the one that comes to mind for me instantly. Not picking on Solana, I think it's gonna have a great future.
Yeah, Solana is
like when Solana, like when you say people use, like when
yeah,
you
I was
say
just saying
people use
Solana has like
the word
super good
decentralization,
competitive
it's kind of
products.
become like a buzzword now and kind of memey.
Yeah, 100%. The thing is that people would just say,
Yeah,
"Oh,
I
we're
mean,
more
I
decentralized."
think they have a bright future. But they're the one blockchain that comes to mind for me. When
I think there's like a little bit of lag there, but no worries. Yeah, I would say that right now,
so
as a UX
just going
designer,
off that, so Ouroboros Leios will make Cardano the fastest blockchain. Now, we saw an example of the Hydra Doom, where there was the transactions per second, the video game that they were kind of showing us the example. We saw Twitter went crazy for it. But is like how realistic is that? Because we know that Cardano is slow and steady. Whenever it does have upgrades like this, it works because they have that research slow and steady approach. They're not moving fast and break things. So do you will Cardano actually be faster than a Solana or a Caspa? And when do you think that will be? Obviously we have the roadmap, but do you think we're going to have any pushbacks, or do you think it's just going to be good to go?
Yeah, good question. So with Leios, we got Leios and Hydra. So Ouroboros Leios is actively being worked on right now by Input Output, and that is a high priority by Charles. And the beautiful thing about Leios is that with Ouroboros Leios, and when Ouroboros Leios is in effect, it's a telescopic protocol with Cardano, meaning that you have redundancies in the event of if there was anything problematic or if there was a mishap with Leios, it just falls back on the previous protocol. It's kind of telescopic. It's able to kind of be dynamic. And Leios, we're already seeing provable benchmarks validating 1,000+ transactions per second. But it's not just a standard TPS because, as mentioned before, the fact that multiple events can be included inside of a transaction in Cardano, we're talking like multiplying by multiplying, so many multiples, but also a parameter where that TPS can be unleashed as fast as need be. So with Cardano, it's kind of more of this deterministic, this modular rate that can ebb and flow based on the needs of the network and have fallbacks for safety if there was an issue with Leios theoretically. And this Ouroboros Leios is speeding up the main L1, the main monolithic layer. So it's not like layer 2, none of that. Leios will speed up like the bare Cardano, and we'll see this as early as like we're getting closer to that Cardano improvement proposal or a CIP. And so that's coming up. They're pretty much making good progress on the simulations, if you will. That was the word I was looking for, the simulations with with Leios. And so we're waiting for that. I think as early would be like Q1 2026. Maybe we'll start to see the proposal to implement it at the end of this year. But likely we're going to see that start to crank up in 2026. In regards to part of your question, which was Hydra, which we saw like Hydra Doom, the 1 million transactions per second. There is something beautiful about Hydra in the fact that it's settling still on the main layer 1. So it's kind of this hybrid of like off-chain and then settling on-chain. But it's all still provable, it's all secure, and it's all settles on the layer 1 with no additional token. So it prevents that situation of like all these extra L2s with tokens for them on whatever network. So Hydra is beneficial for things where, say, like there's gaming developers or certain utilities where they just need such crazy burst output. They can go settle on the main L1. It'll unlock some new utilities as well. They chose that Doom demo because there's going to be also a lot of cool esports utility and things like that, leaderboards, dashboards, prizes, as well as things like that to do like proper prizes, proper payouts, because there's a lot of pain points in the esports in regards to like who's handling what's being done. So Hydra is promising in regards to it's kind of one of many technologies to improve scalability. So if in the words of input output, Hydra and many other tools, it's kind of a constellation to address scalability to Cardano. It's not just one, it's kind of multiple. You got zero knowledge rollups, you got Hydra stuff, you got Leios speeding up the core L1, and all of these kind of have some synergy between one another. And we're going to see some new Hydra stuff. So kind of the alpha is that Hydra, we're going to be seeing some interesting exhibits at Rare Evo. Charles mentioned kind of he was teasing this vending machine idea with Hydra when he was opening the Argentina office for IO. And so we're probably going to be seeing stuff, in his own words, in the physical space, physical products, things of that nature. So we could see something kind of fresh being revealed in the week ahead in Vegas.
So let's shift the focus on Midnight. Midnight is the biggest airdrop that crypto will ever see. There's not just Cardano Community, but XRP, Ethereum, Bitcoin, multiple other communities will be receiving this. What is Midnight, if you can explain it to the audience, and how is it going to enhance Cardano?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Midnight brings selective disclosure private smart contracts. A great way of explaining that is, let's say like you presented, your ID or something. I remember I was renting a car in Florida. The guy's like, I need a picture of your ID. I took a picture, a selfie with my ID. What is he going to do with that? Like birthday, address, right? This, that, boom, 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 to some random stranger. Is he going to delete it? Is he like, what's he going to do with that? Do I have proof of deletion? No one knows. Is he going to just save it in his gallery? And if you can selectively just prove this by blurring out certain details, and let you decide how much privacy you would like to reveal, Midnight is going to allow us to do more of those private smart contracts, selectively disclose certain things, which businesses, they need that. They can't tell you how much money is in the cash register. They have to obscure certain details. Businesses need to also work with each other, but also protect their business secrets. And that's how, like, pragmatically, like Microsoft and say like a company or Samsung and Apple can collaborate. They have to still be able to protect certain parts of their IP instead of just boom, all transparent. And when we look at blockchain, it's a fantastic, like the Satoshi white paper, Bitcoin, it's great, but it's all out there in the public. And so that can be used for or against you. And imagine in a world where they're just like, yeah, you know what, Paul, those stablecoin transactions you did, got to talk about that. Let's talk about that. I don't like that you bought that. I don't like that you bought this and I bought that. And so giving the privacy back to the user, the power of that is so important. We're seeing that now more than ever. Midnight Network is an extension of Cardano. So Cardano was talking about partner chains, and Midnight is basically the first partner chain to Cardano. So Midnight, contrary to what many people think, is launching as a Cardano native token, almost like an ERC, if you will, in the Ethereum world. So it will exist as a Cardano native token. It also is on its own like layer one, its own ledger. The beautiful thing too is that Cardano stake pool operators and stakers not only will earn ADA, they'll also now earn Night. So you get double rewards. So now you're even more incentivized to get a hold of ADA, because if you're staking ADA, now you also get Night token. It'll be like ticker Night. And it was a tough one for them to pull off because it has this dual token model where there's dust token that kind of keeps regenerating. And the dust token, to my knowledge, is not tradable. It's just kind of integral to the infrastructure of Midnight. And Midnight allows, this is a beautiful thing, Solana validators can like validate and participate in Midnight. They can contribute to blocks. Ethereum, many other networks as well. They can contribute to consensus, not just Cardano. But it favors Cardano because it's tied to the hip of Cardano. If Cardano just goes down, like it's going to compromise Midnight because Midnight's relying on the security and validation of those stake pool operators. And so with Midnight, some crazy dogs in the background, let them do their thing. So with Midnight, yeah, it is what it is.
They can hear you, brother.
Yeah. With Midnight, I'd say that it's really about privacy, private smart contracts. It lives on Cardano, and the airdrop is going to be 50% to ADA holders. It favors ADA holders, and it's 8 blockchains in total. So you got your Ethereum, you got your Solana, you got your XRP, Basic Attention Token, or Brave, and the other ones as well, Avalanche, BNB, Bitcoin, etc. And so the Glacier drop that Charles said is kind of like this next level airdrop mechanism uses Hydra technology, uses a lot of the learnings from Cardano, and even stuff like from Polkadot SDK, some consensus love. Those are the words of Charles, consensus love from Optos. So it's taking the best of the industry and connected to Cardano in a way of like, how can I provide all these Cardano stake pool operators? How can they provide some help to other networks? Okay, let's sell this privacy. Let's sell this security and kind of capitalize on, monetize the security of Cardano via Midnight to Solana, to this, to that. Almost as if a gaming developer, like, why rebuild DirectX? Why rebuild OpenGL or Vulkan? You just pay the API or tap into it, boom, and you get that value. So these guys will be able to also transact in their own native token. They can pay with Solana, they can pay with this, and it's going to be invitational and collaborative for them to be able to build in the space. So they'll get the airdrop, they can build in the space, they can participate in consensus. So it's in a way trying to glue the industry together, seeing the growing need in privacy and security, as we've seen with like the anti-CBDC Act and Trump really pushing back against all of that. So I think the time couldn't be any better. So they've been working with the likes of Brave and whatnot. And yeah, it's exciting. They're going to do the airdrop announcement at Rare Evo, and things like mainnet, everything will be going live very soon. So that's it in a nutshell, is like privacy tied to Cardano, connects to the other chains. They can participate. So it's trying to be agnostic and kind of be a win-win. A win for Cardano, a win for Midnight, and a win for the other chains as well. Which is refreshing because there's too much of the me or you mentality.
Yeah, there's a lot of tribalism in crypto, and it's very silly because at the end of the day, I said this recently, at the end of the day, we're all in this together against the TradFi system. So it's, we should all be celebrating the differences of blockchains. If you don't like how one operates, that's cool. Stick with the one that you like.
Yeah.
But just staying on that, so we talked about Midnight. Midnight is a CNT, a Cardano native token. There are a lot that have my attention right now. Strike Finance, Bodega, IAG, to name a few. I'm a big SNEK holder, but I'm curious to see what you're looking at specifically right now.
Yeah, the CNTs, the Cardano native tokens, I would say Igon is, of course, obviously great. You mentioned lots of great projects. Strike Finance really surprised me because I kind of see them as like the Hyperliquid Junior. We know that perpetuals are super hot and very demanding. And we saw today, actually, USDC announced that native support of USDC is coming to Hyperliquid, and some other things as well. So perpetuals are so hot. Strike Finance, what strikes me, for like a lack of a better word, about them is that They're moving very quickly, very Chad developers. They're very agile. They're really focusing on what the users want. They actually said this. They were concerned that if they build on Cardano, there wouldn't be liquidity, right? That's kind of the running theme often when people slam Cardano. Oh, no liquidity, no users, etc. But they said that they were genuinely kind of surprised that it was just really about the product. If you make a good product, people will come. You know, a good product is the best marketing, and marketing only multiplies what it is, if it's a good or a bad product. So I think Strike Finance is doing a fantastic job with perpetuals on Cardano. They just added SNEK. They've been hiring some top talent. They hired a developer from a perpetuals platform on a big centralized exchange in Asia. They also hired a guy with a ton of Apple experience as well. So they're hiring a lot of top talent. They plan on bringing Bitcoin perpetuals too. So I think that leans really well into the Bitcoin DeFi narrative. If they can empower Bitcoiners to do like, you know, a trust minimized or a trustless Bitcoin perpetuals type of thing, I think that will kind of lean into Bitcoin's ethos and give kind of more utility to Bitcoiners. So Strike is definitely one to watch out for. SNEK is undeniable. I say that like one of the best brands, single syllable, great branding, great community, very organic community, very high culture. And they're here day in, day out, relentless. And the team is very hardworking. So I saw that, you know, yesterday, crypto.com just boom, listed SNEK and SNEK perpetuals. And so I think it's just a matter of time. We saw Kraken do it. And I was saying today also on YouTube, I'm like, it's just a matter of time, because when crypto.com does it, Kraken does it, when Binance, you know, when the others, it starts to kind of create this halo effect we call in UX, right? That if one does it, the other does it, kind of it really raises the perceived trust and the confidence in the project. But also part of that, the fact that Charles has been doing all these midnight integrations, spending tens of millions of dollars for custodians and infrastructure, because he needed to get Midnight listed on exchanges. So he had to front the payment for all this stuff. And so because Midnight getting it on these exchanges is a Cardano native token, SNEK and the others will benefit. So we'll actually probably see a bunch of surprise listings as a kind of proxy benefit from the work that's being done with Midnight, with all the partners and exchanges and whatnot. So it's possible that like SNEK on these exchanges is actually indirectly benefited from the work by Midnight. So SNEK is great. Igon is fantastic. I saw that they're shipping their Cyclones very soon, the hardware that they have for participating in their network and quickly setting up nodes for like stake pool operator and whatnot. There's a lot. For me, I like to take my time. Like there's some new projects that sometimes pop out and I won't even talk about them until months and months go by, because I like to let projects kind of be time tested and battle tested and kind of prove themselves and show that they have skin in the game. But like Strike Finance has been doing one hell of a job. And yeah, SNEK and Strike, those two alone are just crushing it. But there's many more, a lot of great projects.
So let's shift the attention to Bitcoin DeFi for a little bit, because
sure,
to me, I mean, ADA is one of the only blockchains capable of doing something like this. I couldn't imagine seeing this on a Solana or something, for example, not to pick on Solana again. But the thought of earning yield on Bitcoin in the Cardano ecosystem is insane to me, because it's a secure system that I genuinely trust. So how do you think Bitcoiners are receiving this? Because I've already seen backlash. People don't care about, you know, everything is a shit coin to some people, right?
Yeah,
But
exactly.
there are people that are just solely Bitcoiners that I know are excited about this. So how do you think this is going to play out?
Yeah, so it's a great question. We still have Bitcoin miners at home. We have future bit miners, and I've participated in mining Bitcoin, both solo and pooled mining, and it's always been an interesting thing to me. I actually I like to be a jest and a meme connoisseur every now and then. Of like, sometimes I'll poke the finger and tell like these self-proclaimed Bitcoin maxis, did they even mine Bitcoin? Do they even know what like hash rate is? Do they? Because sometimes it's like it's just funny. But when it comes to Bitcoin DeFi, I think one of the strongest statements would be if I'm not mistaken, Babylon. I'm not sure if it was a founder, co-founder, CEO, but alongside Charles and Eden Yago from Bitcoin OS, he was saying that people doubted them, and then boom, they launched a product, and one dude put 10,000 Bitcoin in. And he said to this day, years later, that 10,000 Bitcoin, they don't even know who it was, and it's still there. And so we have to remind ourselves that, I often remind people that, like, who am I, like, angry to tell people what they should or shouldn't do? I think that we need to go back to the ethos of decentralization, liberty, live and let live. And because it's a public permissionless blockchain, both Bitcoin and Cardano, people don't need anyone's permission. They can do it in a non-custodial way. And there are some genuine pain points that don't lean into the ethos of Bitcoin, with wrapped Bitcoin, with like just, few people multi-sig watching it. It's not trustless or trust minimized. And Charles's goal when he was at Vegas for Bitcoin DeFi said they want to put the user in the driver's seat. For you to be able to choose, like, how fast, what compromises I want to make. Do I want to wait a little bit longer, a little bit shorter? And so they want to allow people to choose. And as long as it respects the ethos of decentralization, and with what you said, they didn't just talk about it. Well, one great statement by the input output team was like, this is not just theory. We already did it. They swapped an ordinal from Bitcoin mainnet to Cardano mainnet back and forth, embedded some fancy stuff in there as well. And they proved that it was actually possible. And so the beautiful thing is that when a developer becomes familiarized with Cardano, it's actually one-to-one. It's super easy for Bitcoin. This has been the running message really about like development on Cardano. If you can develop on Cardano, you can do Bitcoin and vice versa. So when it comes to developer tooling, there are some great platforms that are going to make it very easy and simple. Input Output has also been focusing on that. I think it's genius branding. They released a paper called Cardinal. So it's like Cardano plus Ordinal. And so it's going to unlock a lot, not just Bitcoin, but also like, the BRCs, the ordinals, and be able to do a bunch of stuff. And so they've been working with Fairgate on, their own, VM, which was called BitVMX, to really power all of that, to be able to write smart contracts and to allow Cardano to be the programmable layer for Bitcoin. So we're going to see a bunch of tooling, and there's a tool that's going to be released quite soon. We may see an announcement by Input Output and whatnot for Bitcoiners to really take it to the next level, start developing. And the nice thing is that a lot of these Cardano dApps, like the biggest lending protocol on Cardano, is ready to integrate Bitcoin. A lot of the DEXs are ready to integrate Bitcoin. It's just a quick update, and they can just allow users to come in, just a quick toggle. So I think that Cardano it has a lot of ethos of Cardano, right? Bitcoin, as Charles said, had a lot of visions that weren't realized. There was something called colored coins, or sometimes people call it colored coins or color coins. And that was basically like the ERC20s, the tokens, if you will. But it just, they kept with the simplicity of Bitcoin, which is beautiful. The immaculate conception, the limitations are actually its benefit. But Cardano is kind of like, if Bitcoin is Goku Super Saiyan, then Cardano just is like Super Saiyan Blue, and it's just another variant of it. It leans into this ethos of, that UTXO, we have extended UTXO. They have the colored coins, we have Cardano native tokens. And so there's an alignment there with the structure, the infrastructure of Bitcoin. And so I think that once these dApps start showcasing that, like, hey, we have great products, there's a lot of benefit here, I think naturally people will start exploring and speculate and test it out. It's really contingent on like a great app. I really believe in like give, make the best app, make it user focused, generate positive emotions. And there are some good some good developers in Cardano that are cooking. So if you can't make a great app, it's not enough to just be like, hey, this is technology. You really have to make like the great roller coaster, the great rides. That's how I see blockchain is like, it's like a theme park. And if all you do is tout technology, it's like an empty theme park. You need to have great rides for people to come. And those rides are the dApps. They are the, the Radium. They are this DEX and that DEX, the Uniswap, the MinSwap. So I think that Cardano has had some time to mature, and some of the great apps are kind of showcasing their strengths, and they're ready to plug in for Bitcoin. So it's going to be one that's going to take some time. It's not going to be like flip a switch and then TVL just goes through the roof. But if Charles can capture a small amount, just a tiny amount, Cardano could go crazy. Because many people criticize Cardano for low TPS, but they don't realize Bitcoin has very low TPS. And if you look at TVL, DeFi TVL on Bitcoin is quite low ratio-wise. So Bitcoin has its first market mover advantage, but people will want to explore because of their human nature. And you've been seeing that with tokenized stocks, IPOs. Naturally, people will rotate. And so I think, and part of this is, do they want to do it with like a chain that might experience a lot of hacks? Do they want to do it with a chain that just, I came out of here nowhere and boom, like I rugged 3 months later? But Cardano has proven itself for 8 years, no hacks, no outages. And so that resilience, but also respecting their decentralization, giving them the power, I think that is the competitive advantage. And I think that is what Altcoin Daily is saying, like, hey, unlocking Bitcoin DeFi, that's Cardano's edge. And I think that is Cardano's edge. This cycle, I think Bitcoin DeFi, decentralization, and compliance and whatnot, these are very important narratives.
I agree. And I'm glad you mentioned the UTXO model, because that's what makes Cardano so compatible with Bitcoin. When people ask me why I like Cardano, I tell them, well, I just think it's the best parts of Bitcoin and the best parts of Ethereum, and then a bit of its own mix that basically makes up for the areas in which Bitcoin and Ethereum lack. Or, you know, something that obviously Charles and Vitalik had a lot of disagreements about, the direction of Ethereum. And some of those disagreements ended up being implemented into Cardano. So yeah, I guess just kind of staying on that, um, you know, ADA just, or basically actually just kind of moving on. The one thing I realize in crypto is, like you said, I love that analogy you used with the theme park, the amusement park. That's very interesting, but you need a solid community, because even if, you know, Cardano with the slow and steady approach, you need time to develop. You need to hit some of these upgrades that's going to enhance the blockchain. You know, in last bull run, we barely even had staking. I don't even believe we didn't have half the smart contracts. We have over 300,000 smart contracts now on Cardano. So with all of this development that just took place over the past 4 years or so, how do you see the future with Cardano now over the next 4 years?
Yeah, that's a good question. Regarding like what you said, the roller coaster and theme park analogy, we see this a lot in Web3 space, and this is also why I made Angry Crypto, was to help to reduce the technical jargon. There's a lot of jargon in the space, and we don't see that in the real world, right? When we get behind a car, the complicated technology is hidden behind obscurity under the hood of the car, right? We just have push to start, we turn on the ignition, and there's design conventions that they adhere to, but we don't grab a loudspeaker and be like, Paul, you got to know how this engine works. You got to read this manual. You got to know how to like change the tire. It's not the case. And the same thing with Web 2. Like, we don't use different web browsers for different websites. Can you imagine how horrendous that would be? It's all standards based, and we're in an emerging market. So of course, these are some of the growing pains of the industry. You know, you're gonna have your winners, losers. Things will kind of dissolve in the space, whether it's even like dApps in an ecosystem. And regarding Cardano, I think that the future of it is yes, you can't really just, you can never buy a community. You can't really just like speed run just having a community. I think that Charles has, and he has said, we're not going to stop until crypto is in every facet of society and can hold them accountable and whatnot. And so I think that people really align with the vision of Charles. I think Charles is not only a very charismatic leader and speaker, but also highly intellectual, and he's proven himself time and time again. Not just talk the talk, but he can walk the walk. You know, sometimes we have founders that just, they can't. They just, you know, they're just doing charismatic wizardry. And so, but part of that too is that it's not enough to just be like great tech, right? What happened to MySpace? What happened to Yahoo? Yahoo's still around. What happened to BlackBerry Messenger, right? BlackBerry Messenger, and BlackBerry was like, oh, we're resilient, we're safe. When I was working in retail, I had people come in the store being like, hey, like, I love my BlackBerry, I'm never going to give it up. But people eventually did when there was something newer, stronger, faster. and the benefits to transition outweighed the friction to transition. And so Cardano, I think, is doing a okay job. It can do a better job in some stuff, to focus on the user, focus on what they want, build what they're looking for, listen to them, do the usability testing, the researching. Branding is very important. And I think of projects like Abstract and like what's going on in Solana. There's a lot to learn. And we have learned, like SNEK made SNEK.fun, which was inspired by Pump Fun. And so there are developers looking at the competitive landscape. Where Cardano will be years from today, I think that if Cardano continues to do continue to do development, refine, chisel, I think that it could be integrated at things like mission critical tasks. We did see Cardano Foundation collaborate with NASA on proof of concepts. We did see a proof of concept also with the Dubai police a year ago being announced. A lot of institutions have been taking interest in Cardano, not only from like a governance, because they can technically participate in governance and shape and form the direction of the project, but even just the safety of the project, that they can depend on it. So I think that we may see Cardano potentially integrated more in like institutions, maybe foundational levels where it's not so like hot and sexy, but it's like sometimes the boring things are very integral, right? Like the HTML and Linux and all these things. They may not be super flashy on the front, but on foundational levels playing a big role, because Charles does want to see Cardano kind of become this active, kind of this role in providing more value to other ecosystems too. Like we have all these stake pool operators. How nice it would be to be able to provide that network capability to others. And we see that in the Web2 space of kind of like cloud platforms and cybersecurity and network kind of leasing their security, leasing their hardware. So I think that Cardano could play a role with a good fit with like more institutional stuff, infrastructure related things, right? We don't want our electricity to go out. It's funny how people will point the finger at like, oh, who cares if there was an outage here, but they don't want their electricity to go out, right? Some things are definitely very integral for infrastructure like water and sewage and things like this. And these things are also being explored by Cardano Foundation. Frederick Regard, about 6 to 9 months ago, was talking about the work and exploration like sewage, city utility, things like this. They're more kind of leaning in that wine tracking, logistics. We're seeing more and more imposter stuff, right? 2025, right? There's just so many fake products, counterfeit products. So if it can also help in that aspect, I think that it's going to be a lot of these boring utilities that could actually be very beneficial for Cardano in the long run.
So if I'm looking to get into Cardano for the first time, I'm looking to buy some of these native tokens that we're talking about. Maybe I'm in Bitcoin and I'm looking to get in on Bitcoin DeFi. Like where do I go? What wallets would you recommend? What DeFi platforms would you recommend to interact with that's native to the Cardano ecosystem?
Yeah, the good question. I would say that it's always great for people to do their research and I got onboarded through like Doge and XRP and whatever way. I think that meme coins usually end up onboarding people. I would say that MinSwap is a very welcoming and cute and friendly platform. It's quite user friendly. So MinSwap also integrated their own aggregator. So when it comes to finding good rates, they've been also subsidizing and reducing fees, eliminating fees. So this is part of that being competitive in nature. So I'd say to users who want to take a look at like native tokens, definitely good to take a look at a platform like MinSwap. They continue to innovate and get better and make the rates even more competitive. Strike also, by the way, integrated them recently. I would say for wallets, Vesper is kind of underrated. And Vesper is a very small team, very agile team, but sometimes it's the small teams that do amazing work, right? Like sometimes the small teams, less is more, less chefs in the kitchen. So Vesper is a fantastic one. Tokyo Wallet's a very good one, very strong community. They're going cross-chain with like, they got Sui right around the corner. They became a Circle Alliance member, and they're going to bring like XRP and a bunch of other stuff too. So they're highly talented, highly skilled developers. And of course, Input Output's own homebrew wallet, Lace Wallet, which is the notorious like Bitcoin toggle, which will be, Bitcoin's already, you can already send Bitcoin in Lace Wallet. And if anyone is an XRP fan, XRP is also coming to Lace wallet. No definitive time, but it is on the way. And contrary to people who don't like XRP, Charles is a big fan of XRP, a fan of Brad Garlinghouse, David Schwartz. And so, yeah, I would say that like Lace, Vesper, and Tokyo are great wallets. There's many other great wallets. MinSwap is definitely the kind of hub that comes to mind, especially because of its fresh aggregator that's just days old.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned XRP, because the next thing I wanted to ask you about is obviously Charles has made the announcement he wants to bring RLUSD on the Cardano ecosystem. He's been talking to Brad, David Schwartz. So how impactful do you think that could be? Because we're talking about communities here. XRP community is insane. They are arguably bigger and more crazier than the ADA community and Bitcoin maxis combined. So like
XRP army is gigantic.
Yeah. Yeah. How big do you think this integration would be with RLUSD if it went, move forward?
So this is interesting. I've told people this many times. I was part of XRP army before Cardano. Like I bought Cardano back in 2020 and I keep an eye on it, but I didn't really go deep in the community until like when I made Angry Crypto, which was like give or take a year and a half, 2 years ago. The wallet on my phone is actually XRPL wallet. Like I got an XRPL wallet on my phone, and there's a lot of misconceptions, unfortunately, to Ripple. People just love to be like, oh, Brad's a scammer. That's, they don't want to have an objective take, right? I always believe in, civil scholarly dialogue that we can be willing to agree and disagree. XRPL integrations would be huge for Cardano because one thing is that XRP doesn't have staking. It's a proof of consensus. It was the first carbon neutral blockchain. It solved the gas wars and even has a native DEX on its blockchain. So there's no aggregation. It's just a native DEX like on its ledger. Very unique. And the DEXs are almost like this front end that just access the native ledger, like order books accessing the native ledger. Whatever DEX you use, doesn't matter. It's just like a UI. And so the RLUSD is approaching $600 million in issuance. I was taking a look at the pace of growth for RLUSD compared to Tether and USDC, and they're matching, if not beating, their pace. When you add the fact that Ripple has been getting all these bank licenses and RLUSD is NYDFS compliant, enterprise grade, XRPL, Ethereum, and many other chains likely in the future, plus monthly attestations, US based, Ripple is like perfectly ready, set, go for the United States. It's like just perfectly aligned. So I think that it really serves to benefit as a stopgap also, that if USDC and USDT don't come to Cardano now, I do think that maybe they'll come in the next cycle. I think RLUSD would be a fantastic, project to get on, because that is one of the biggest pain points on Cardano is stablecoin issuance. And I'm not going to tell you guys la la land, oh, we're all great. Actually, today I told Charles, I replied to him and I said, they minted our stablecoin issuance in 48 hours, maybe 24 hours, like total issuance. And so we have to be honest with ourselves. And that's part of also pushing Angry is like not to have the cognitive dissonance. We have to be able to take a look at the horizon. What are people doing? Where do we need to address? And I'm happy to announce that Charles, he wants to kickstart that growth with the treasury, get some more of the stable coins issued on Cardano to help with price impact and slippage, and to also send a bullish signal to Tether and Circle that, hey, we're investing more in our ecosystem. Come check it out. So yeah, when it comes to XRPL, I think it's great because XRPL doesn't have like smart contracts and the DeFi programmability that Ethereum offers and Solana and SUI and whatnot. So Cardano can give smart contract programmability to XRPL. XRPL has a lot of utility in terms of its liquidity, its user base, big audience. And also because XRP doesn't have staking, what I witnessed was that when automated market makers came out for XRPL, people were just like, where do I go? How do I make money? Which platform do I have to use? Do I use Orchestra Finance? People were loving to just boom, provide liquidity, even if they didn't know what they were doing. Many people were getting wrecked. They were just rushing in, providing one-sided liquidity and getting wrecked with impermanent loss. So there's a great opportunity because their XRP doesn't sit. It just gets traded, or they're doing stuff like with automated market makers. I think they would love to use a platform like Lace and enjoy some like NFT goodness and staking rewards and lending and borrowing powered by Liquid, powered by Lace in a very user-friendly format, because it just gives them more programmability. And they are one of the chains that also, just like Cardano, has been scapegoated for the longest time as like, oh, you're the dinosaur coin, you're not going to do anything. So I watched for years as people were like, Ripple is suppressing us at 50 cents. And then we saw what happened in November 2024. And so, yeah, I think that XRPL has a lot to provide. We have big audience, big community, a lot of liquidity. They've solved the stablecoin stuff. We can also support them with also a bustling community, programmability, and also show good faith with like Midnight. And moving forward, Charles also said that, you know, he's open to the idea of expanding the treasury to become like multi-asset, which it will become, because we'll get Night tokens. So the treasury is going to be more than just a passive non-yield bearing treasury with ADA, which is what it is now. We could also open up the door for like blockchain to blockchain partnerships. Hey, we'll buy some XRP, you buy some ADA, you know, and we kind of go from there and can establish like stronger alliances. And lest we forget that Ripple, XRPL Labs, and Cardano via input output are part of the DeRec Alliance, which is part of that's basically put together by Hydra and whatnot. Algorand and many others are part of that. And that is an initiative with these companies that is aimed to make Web3 recovery easy like Web2, because we know that's a huge pain point, right? You forget your seed phrase, you misplace it, it's GG, no re. So there's a lot of great synergy between, there's a lot of good alignment between like what Ripple is trying to do and what Charles is also trying to do as well. I think there's some good strategic alignment.
So let's talk about Charles for a little bit. You actually had the pleasure of meeting Charles. So my two questions for you are, how was that? And then just following up on that, Charles, as we said, is a very outspoken person, speaks his mind. You know, he does his own lives on YouTube and frequently touches on topics and says things that could rub people the wrong way, might be a little cringy, however you want to see it. However, I have a lot of respect for people who speak their mind. I'm a big fan of Charles. We're a big fan of Charles here on the channel. So Charles, if you're seeing this, we would love to have you. But how do you kind of see this? Like, I know obviously people think he's very polarizing. Do you think he is an asset to the chain, or do you think he holds Cardano back in any way?
Yeah, it's hard. Like, first I'll give the premise of like human nature. Like, you know, no one will remember a seed phrase, because user experience design teaches us that people are chaotic, unpredictable. You know, we slip and fall and make mistakes. And I think people often hold this like scrutiny to Charles as almost unhuman. It's like superhuman, like, hey, Charles, you made him one mistake, bad man. You know, and they forget that they're also human too. It's like, what have you achieved? What have you done? I think that Charles could just choose not to be here, right? Like, he already's done like a good job for himself and co-founding Ethereum, and he chooses to be here. He chooses to put in his time. He chooses to build, and he's made it clear that with input output, it's beyond also Cardano. He wants to build products on Cardano. He wants to also go from building Cardano to building on Cardano. So not just like, okay, bye guys, like Cardano, it's yours, meme coin, and I'm going to go do this. And we know that's the case, because otherwise Midnight wouldn't be a Cardano native token, and ADA holders wouldn't be getting like Night rewards, and, you know, ADA validators wouldn't get Night rewards. So I think that meeting Charles was a pleasure. It was fantastic to meet him briefly, and he's the real deal. Like, how he is in person is how he is online. And yeah, you know, I'm a music producer. I was like DJing growing up in the clubs and with the promoters and with scammers and with this and that. And I doing a lot of sales. I built a lot of human skills with social skills. And so I'm good with, like, if I'm with someone, you can just tell if they're fake or just like if it's a double persona. But Charles is the real deal. Charles is the same guy that you see. He has that same passion. He has that same conviction. And like, you know, whatever he's doing, like, he's passionate, he's driven, he has that grit, and he's determined. And I think that's important, because we bet on people. When people like buy BNB, they're betting on CZ. People are betting on Armstrong. I'm betting on like Garlinghouse and Charles Hoskinson. And I know people say he's not the CEO of Cardano, right? He's the founder, and there's no CEO technically. Yes, there's Cardano Foundation with CEO Frederick Regard, but Cardano is like, Charles is still the pseudo CEO, the psychological CEO, because humans always like look for a leader, right? We always want that captain. We always go to a captain.
Yeah.
You can't have more than one captain on the wheel. So Charles is I think integral, and I think he offers a lot of good. Yes, he may say some spicy stuff, some provocative stuff, but who doesn't? I mean, look at David Schwartz's wall. You know, one poll is about which orange juice, like this orange juice or that orange juice, and people go crazy. And so I think there's an expectation to sanitize some founders, and they forget that they're human. And if we can just humanize them and be grateful and look at the good, we can see that, like, hey, there's a guy who's trying, he's doing his best. And yeah, he said he's going to do this, and many things they've come to fruition. So I think he's been great for the space, and no one is perfect, and no blockchain is perfect. You know, we're struggling a little bit with stable coins, but we'll solve that. You know, another chain is struggling with decentralization. They can solve that. So I think the more that we can humanize that and look at the good and bad, and realize, like, you know, why am I in this project, the better we're off. You know, that's one thing that I've been striving to do too, is that I don't shy away from cross-chain posts. Or today I've made a post about Solana, and today I retweeted Hyperliquid USDC. So I'm trying my best to kind of lean into what he said, which is like the age of collaborative economics. You know, that's the way we got to move forward. So kudos to him. It's not easy traveling everywhere, doing all those interviews. I don't know how he does it. I think that's one of the things I asked him. I was like, I don't know how you're traveling so much and all those flights. It's a lot of work. So,
well, I believe he has his private jet is like the second in the world in regards to like rentals or something like that. He makes like passive income renting out his jet, which is
hey, that's
insane
smart.
miles
Get
every
some
day.
yield on there. Yeah, get some yield on the jet. Some jet yield. Yeah, and he's doing some crazy stuff. He's you know, those glow in the dark plants. He's like, he told me, he's like something's going to be coming out with that. You know, the stuff that he's been doing with all that like regenerative stuff and medicinal stuff, but also the glowing plants. We could be seeing some crazy stuff in the blockchain space, which is exciting. He's trying to be at the forefront of all the exciting narratives, and yeah, I think that Cardano will be here moving forward, and Charles is provides a lot of value.
Yeah, and speaking of that, you know, collaborative nature and discussing things outside of Cardano, obviously I do the same thing. I talk a lot about other coins as well. But my last question here for you, curious about Litecoin. I know that you're a Litecoin holder. The second golden cross in its history, I believe, just happened recently last week. I mean, I've always kind of liked Litecoin. Like, I conceptually understand it. I think they've positioned themselves to be kind of the silver to Bitcoin's gold. They're looking to kind of get more people onboarded, bigger name recognition. But I mean, their daily transaction volume was like third the other day over Ethereum, and plenty other massive chains, which I was so surprised about. So my last question for you, just to wrap it up, is what's the future of Litecoin?
Yeah, Litecoin is, you know, my brother was visiting like some family. They needed some help with crypto. And he was like, bro, you were right about Litecoin. I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, you know, these elderly, like the family, like they're just like, oh, asking about Litecoin and asking about, it was just like Litecoin was one of the top 3 tokens that they were mentioning, one of the coins they were mentioning. And Litecoin has just such a nice ticker, LTC. It just rolls off the tongue. Sometimes these most simplest things are important, like the ticker. XRP is amazing because the name is the ticker, double the SEO. Super easy to pronounce, super like so short and simple. There's a great saying in UX of you can bake half a cake, not a half-baked cake. Less is more. We're seeing too much featureitis, they call it in the Web3 space. The greatest example of that was the Homer Simpson vehicle, which you've probably seen, which is like it's trying to be a sports car, it's trying to be a van, it's trying to be this, and actually becomes nothing. So Litecoin, its beauty is its simplicity. I think it goes back to some of the beauty that Cardano has of like, it's so old, right? I remember whether it launched on Coinbase like 2 cycles ago. And so it's not trying to do all these crazy stuff. Oh, we're doing RWAs, we're doing this and doing that. It's perceived as like, you know, with a small multiple of Bitcoin supply, is very similar, and it's sufficiently cheap to transact. I remember when I was like moving stuff crypto for cheap, Litecoin was my go-to last cycle because I was able to move funds around, no problem. And so it's cheap to transact, proof of work. At the same time, it has that optional privacy. I've never leveraged it personally, but having that optional privacy, I'm sure would be of interest for people, especially with how hot it is now with Tornado Cash, all those charges being dropped and midnight and everything else. So I think it's really the brand is the most important. I think the top is the brand and the community. The brand and the community, I feel like it's a sleeper because if you look at every time it performed on CoinGecko or CMC, it's been higher highs each time, just slightly higher highs each time. And it feels like it's dormant right now and it's asleep. And so I've said this as a joke, but there's some seriousness to it that Litecoin kind of seems like an altcoin index, like altcoin season index, because it's asleep right now around like, I don't know. I mean, I'm a Canadian, so it was around like 148 Canadian or something like that. So whatever that was in US. But yeah, I think that it's a sleeper right now. If a project didn't just retrace and did new highs, that's something that's important. If a project has a great brand and a great ticker and a strong community, that's so important because narrative is something that often people overlook. They look at technology, they forget about like the fundamentals, which is really about brand. And that's why you see Alex Becker be like, I'm getting the Cardano, because he knows that the mind share, the social dominance is very important. And surprisingly, even though Litecoin's very low, to your credit, like if it's highly traded and there's a lot of social mentions, then it could be a sleeper waiting to wake up.
Angry man, where can the audience find you on social media?
Yeah, you can find me on MySpace and MSN. No, just you can find me on, you can find me on YouTube, Twitter. Be safe because there's too many impersonators, so be careful out there. And we're going to see a surge of more scammers as we get more into the altcoin season. So be alert, find discernment. Be safe when you guys are out there. Vigilance. Take it easy because too many people are rushing these days.
Yeah, 100%.
Patience is good.
Guys, make sure to go follow Angry.
I appreciate it, man. It's a great podcast with you, man. And make sure you guys smash that subscribe and smash that like. The legend.
There you go. Hell yeah, doing my job for me. Well, we look forward to having you on again at some point, brother. Appreciate you for jumping on. ADA community, let us know you're here in the chats, in the comments. And yeah, man, appreciate you for coming on. And we'll see you next time.
It's a pleasure, man. Appreciate it.